All right, this is the copyright disclaimer. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. And this video is not for any monetary gain. It is explicitly for the reasons stipulated in the Copyright Act of 1976 under Section 107.
You have to go look at who owned the slave ships. And guys, people, they'll do everything they can to tell you it wasn't Jews owning the slave ships. It was Jews owning the slave ships. I've checked. I've looked through the logs, not just the conspiracy stuff. Go look at slave ship logs that are available. Go look at the registrations on the ships. Go look at who was in control of the ports: Charleston, South Carolina, New Orleans, and St. Augustine. Those were the big three. Those were the big three. And that's where most of the slaves were coming in. The Southern plantation slaveholding culture was not a Christian, white, Southern United States thing. It was a Caribbean, Jewish way of life.
This is the book of Obadiah, chapter 1, verse 10, and it reads, For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. Giving all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rahakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well in teaching us this 100% truth. Salutations to them and my fellow Akim who labor in this truth week in and week out on the highways and byways. Also, salutations to the hopeful elect of the scattered 12 tribes of Israel, scattered to the four corners of the earth, that be like unto the speckled bird, also known as your Israelite foreigners, and your so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. To you, I say Shalom. This is your brother Ayashar Barazal, a prophet of doom from the Indianapolis branch of the Great Millstone, coming back at you with another lesson that is edifying to the elect body of the nation of Israel. And this scripture here, Obadiah 1 and 10, is talking about Esau, Edom, who is the so-called white man, according to Genesis 25 and 25, and who is the wicked. Okay, the nation created to be the wicked, according to Malachi 1 and 4. All right. And he's talking about the violence against his twin brother Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, being of the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay. And that violence has been perpetual um, since, he sold his birthright. Esau sold his birthright to Jacob. All right, for some for some uncooked meat and lentils. Okay, and we know that's Esau today. You get all type of videos today where this wicked individual is eating meat with the blood in it, or just straight out raw. All right, that's one of those signs of who he is. All right, and it says, "Shame shall cover thee," and the shame is covered for all of his history. As the scriptures say, the Lord has made Esau bare. All right. He's made him bear all of his terrible history against Jake, and the world for that matter, but in particular, Jacob, Israel. Okay, the 12 tribes. You know, he's put a hell of a you know uh, 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 violence on us to this very day. All right, and all of his stuff is being exposed. They cannot hide anymore. Okay, and we know at the forefront of that is Amalek, who are your small hatters today, the ones who acquired our land by that false document, the Balfour Declaration of 1948. Yeah, they not only financed the transatlantic slave trade, okay, they own the ships, all right, and and they own the insurance companies, okay. So yeah, they have a huge hand, and like the Lord said in Exodus chapter 17, towards the end, He will be at war with Amalek from generation to generation. And where are we right now to this very day? Okay. They pretty much, well, not pretty much, they own America right now. And like one of their councils, Judith Varney Shore, said the number one problem for the state of Israel is the black youth of America. Okay. They've, have assumed our identity, but everyone knows that, that they're not the people. Okay. You don't have all of the land as specified in Genesis chapter 15, verse 18. Okay. All 12 tribes uh, are not there in the part that you're in. Okay. You're sharing that with the Palestinians who you're trying to clean out. And now it looks like you want to take over Venezuela as well too, you know. But you're not going to be able to run from this judgment, which is going into you after your shame is coming. You're going to be cut off forever. Okay, you will no longer exist. Okay, and we know that Amalek is the head tribe of the nation of Edom, and according to Deuteronomy 25 verses 17 through 19, he is going to be cut off forever. And once you cut the head off, the rest of the body follows, meaning all of Edom. Okay, let me get that. They're going to be cut off forever. No longer, no more will exist. This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 25, beginning in verse 17. And it says, remember what Amalek did unto thee by the way, when ye were come forth out of Egypt, how he met thee by the way, and smote the hindmost of thee, even all that were feeble behind thee, when thou wast faint and weary, and he feared not Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. And that is not only Amalek's, the whole nation of Edom's MO. Okay. They always prey on the weak. All right. Any situation, you know, when it's a level playing field, they are going to lose that battle. Okay. But that's why they have to be cunning and conniving. You know, they come after the children, and they come after the women. And when it's against a single Jake who is able body, either they have to outgun them or they have to outman them. Okay, because almost 100% of the time they're not going to win that battle unless they have a special skill set that Jake does not have, and even that's questionable, you know, considering a raw strength. All right, it says verse 19. Therefore it shall be when Yahweh thy power has given thee rest from all thy enemies round about, and the land which Yahweh thy power giveth thee for an inheritance to possess it, that thou shalt blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. Thou shalt not forget it. So while they're telling us not to forget that psyop that happened around World War II, okay, we should not forget what they did to us. And notice here, he says he will give us rest from all of our enemies round about, okay, in the land which Yahweh thy power giveth us for an inheritance. Okay, that's the land that's being occupied right now. Like I said in Genesis chapter 15, verse 18, the land that was given to Abraham was from the great river of Egypt all the way over to the Euphrates. Okay, so it's not just that small portion that that they're occupying right now. It's much more than that, much more than that. And he told us not to forget it. So once again, um, it's going to say, and Amalek, who's the head tribe of Edom, according to who's the first of the nation, according to Numbers 24 and 20. I don't have to get that. We go through that every week. Once the head goes, the rest of the body follows. Okay, so, and in this case, the rest of the nation. Okay, it said he shall be blotted out of remembrance, Amalek. Thou shalt blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. Yeah, This is why they're coming after the true Israelites. Okay. And like I said, he will be blotted out. All right. This is going back to the book of Obadiah, chapter 1. It's only one chapter, verse 18. All right. And it says, "And the house of Jacob, that's the southern kingdom, shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph, which is the northern kingdom, a flame, and the house of Esau for stubble. And they shall kindle in them and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for Yahweh Bashem Yahushai have spoken it." All right. So once, the Lord comes back and you go into captivity, according to Revelations 13, 9, and 10, okay, and you serve in that captivity twice as long and twice as hard as we did, but in righteousness, that's according to Revelations 18, verses 5 and 6, okay. You can read that on your own, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, once that happens, then Obadiah 1 and 18, when your slavery has come to an end, you're going to be rounded up by the Israelites, okay, both the southern and the northern kingdom. But by that time, we're going to be one nation again, as it's stated in Ezekiel 37. Okay, we're going to be one nation again, and then you're going to be gotten rid of, never again to be upon the face of the earth or rule again. You can get that in Isaiah chapter 14, verses 21 and 22. You will never rule again. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get to this article. It's one from one of our notable sites that we get this history from. And I just recently found out they have a YouTube page too, EJI, which means Equality Justice Initiative. All right. It says, on this day, January 7th, 1807. So this is roughly 219 years ago. Okay. It says, it's titled Trafficking Ship Fair American Delivers 88 Enslaved Africans into Charleston, South Carolina. All right. It says on January 7th, 1807, a U.S. registered trafficking vessel delivered 88 kidnapped and enslaved African passengers into Charleston, South Carolina. And those African passengers were actually Israelites. Okay. Israelites. All right. From the West Coast. You can see the slave coast on the 1747 Negro land map. Okay. There's a full size map. You can see the full area of the Negro land, and then you can buy the part of the West Coast where you can see the slave coast of Wida, which is Judah. Okay. 1747 Negro land map. All right. It says the ship. Oh, notice here it says U.S. registered. Okay. So, like we keep telling you, Jakes, you're looking for reparations from this government. This government has consistently played a hand in our demise. Okay. You're asking people who went through great lengths to have you to build their wealth to ask them to give it back. That ain't gonna happen. That's not gonna happen. They'll pay everybody else, but then they're not gonna pay you, Jake. All right. And hopefully you figured that out by now. But some of you all are still so damn ignorant, you won't. All right. It says the ship named Fair American, nothing fair about that stuff. All right, originally kidnapped 101 Africans from Yes de los, an island chain off the coast of contemporary Conakry, Guinea, in West Africa. All right, yep. So West Africa is where we came from. It says or where we not where we came from, but where the slave coast was, where we were loaded up and brought over here. All right. It says, however, nearly 15% of these forced passengers perished on a grueling journey across the Atlantic. It says the port of Charleston imported more enslaved Africans during the transatlantic slave trade than any other city in North America. That's why it's the way it is today. You know, South Carolina, Alabama, Louisiana, a lot of those southern states are still very, very racist to this day. All right. I mean, and blatantly, you know. All right. It says, from its beginnings as a British proprietary colony in 1663, South Carolina entrenched the institution of chattel slavery. South Carolina's proprietors incentivized enslavers to immigrate, offering 10 to 20 acres of free land for every enslaved black person that a white settler forcibly brought to the colony. Wow. All right. Yeah, this. Yeah, y'all got to pay for this, and you're going to. All right. It says by 1720, South Carolina was importing an average of 1,000 enslaved Africans annually. This figure rose to 3,000 by 1770. By the middle of the 18th century, enslaved people made up more than 70% of Charleston's population. Okay. That's why you started getting these amendments in, just in case there was a slave uprising. They brought so many over, they you know, outnumber themselves. All right, and Jake was strong too, but Esau had that sword, that weapon. All right, it says the kidnapping, trafficking, and sale of Africans Israelites escalated dramatically in Charleston between 1803 and 1807. Anticipating a constitutional ban on the transatlantic slave trade beginning in 1808, traffickers in Charleston imported more than 40,000 kidnapped Africans during these 5 years alone. All right, so this is where you get, Zechariah um 1 and 15. Grab that. There's other scriptures too, but hey, Zechariah 1 and 15. All right. It says that, and this is the Lord, and I am very sore displeased with the heathen that are at ease. You too damn comfortable. All right. And doing what you're doing to Jake. All right. It says, for I was but a little displeased, and they helped forward the affliction. See, we were on a punishment for our transgression of the law. Okay. Deuteronomy 28, 68. You know, ultimately coming over here on slave ships and yokes of iron. Okay. It says they helped forward the affliction. So, like scriptures say, when our calamity was coming to an end, you put your foot on the gas. All right. But once again, uh, Manifest Destiny has a part two, and you're not gonna like it whatsoever. All right. There's nothing you can do about it because it's coming. All right. It says the 88 kidnapped Africans trafficked into Charleston on this day was some of the first in 1807, a year that would see more than 21,000 kidnapped Africans trafficked through the port. Charleston accounted for 95% of the total Africans trafficked into the U.S. in 1807. All right. It goes on, it says, as mortality rates on the fair American illustrate, the Middle Passage subjected kidnapped passengers to brutal, traumatic conditions, with many perishing before reaching North American shores. It says at least 13% of all kidnapped Africans destined for Charleston during the transatlantic slave trade died during the Middle Passage. It says Africans trafficked to Charleston face equally brutal conditions following disembarkation. Many spent weeks quarantined on Sullivan's Island in Charleston Harbor or detained in the city's warehouses, where thousands died awaiting sale at downtown markets. It says Africans trafficked to South Carolina faced a lifetime of involuntary servitude on labor intensive rice plantations. Rice required 10 times the labor to produce when compared to other colonial cash crops. One of those being cotton. Okay. It says further in South Carolina, enslavers had complete discretion over the sentencing and punishment of enslaved people accused of wrongdoing, resulting in brutal physical torture and summary executions. That's because we were considered property. All right. It says South Carolina's rice plantations had alarming mortality rates among enslaved people, higher than anywhere else in the South. About one third of enslaved Africans who landed in South Carolina died within a year. Yeah, that's that. That furthering the affliction. Okay. All right. So that's the end of the article. I'm going to put a link to this article in the description box. All right. So let me get some scriptures. All right. This is the book of Ezekiel. I'm going to start at the top, Ezekiel 35, and begin at verse 1. It says, Moreover, the word of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai came unto me, saying, Son of man, okay, prophet, okay, Ezekiel, set thy face against Mount Seir and prophesy against it. And Mount Seir, we know, was the home that was given to Esau, Edom, by the Lord. Okay, Mount Seir. Okay, it's called Petra today. All right, and if you look at the architecture over there, it matches, all the architecture of ancient Greece and Rome, and now America. So you know it's the Edomites, and it's got eagles sitting right on the top of it. All right. It says, Set thy face against Mount Seir and prophesy against it, and say unto it, Thus saith Yahweh our power, Behold, O Mount Seir, I am against thee, and I will stretch out mine hand against thee, and I will make thee most desolate. Yeah, he's going to waste you. All right. Just like it said in Obadiah 1 and 18. All right. It says, I will lay thy cities waste, and thou shalt be desolate, and thou shalt know that I am Yahweh, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. And how they gonna know? Because right now, the earth is given into the hands of the wicked, according to Job 9 and 24. And right now, this devil looks unbeatable. You see, that happening and what just happened in Venezuela. But yeah, they know. They know their time is up because the same president just did what they did to Venezuela. He also, at the end of 2019, uh, created the Space Force. That's not going to work. You know, we already saw when they shot one of those Hellfire missiles at a chariot and what it did to it. Okay. Not only did that missile bounce off, the chariot somehow consumed it. The parts that exploded, he pulled it in with it, and hey, you know, uh, it just disintegrated. Okay, that's cool. It says, okay, they gonna know because once they come into this power, you got them bragging right now, talking about fuck around and find out, bragging heavily, and we know he's working at the beck and call of Benjamin Netanyahu. All right, you know, who was in the forefront of the imposters that are living in our land right now. But that's okay. We know what the prophecies say. That's why they're getting mad, and censoring everything. Like they changed the brothers' video um, with AI the other day. All right. So yeah, they're very afraid right now and through for the most part. The prophets know exactly what's happening. So we're just sitting back and letting it play out. Okay. Staying diligent. All right. Striving till death, to this truth, because we know the Lord gonna fight for us. All right. Verse 5, it says, Because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword. That was Esau's blessing. Genesis chapter, I think it's 27. Yeah. Beginning of verse 39 through 41. His blessing was a sword. Okay. It says, starting back at the top of verse 5, Because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. So, yeah, you know, uh, That has happened several times, and this was one of them. You know, you kept going. You found out that slavery was going to be abolished in 1808, and you ramped it up. Okay, you kept on shedding blood, as that article said. Through the process of chattel slavery. All right, verse 6. It says, "Therefore, as I liveth, saith Yahweh our power, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. Since thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee." And how's the Lord going to do this? Okay, because we know, uh, it's a life for a life. You know, that's in the scriptures, righteousness. Okay, but how's he going to do this? By the hand of his people. This is the book of Joel, chapter 3, beginning in verse 19. It says, "Egypt shall be a desolation." And Egypt, in this case, meaning the house of bondage. Okay. Mizraim, straits, of a place of difficulty. All right. And that's where we are in this land. As I read in Deuteronomy chapter 25, talking about blotting out Amalek, the only time we're going to have rest is when we're at home in our land, nowhere else. Baruch 3 and 8 tells us that, you know, as long as we are not home, we will not be at rest. Okay. Plenty of scriptures that say that, in Micah 2 and 10, it tells us this place is not our rest. Okay. Back in Joel 3, it says, "Egypt shall be a desolation, and Edom shall be a desolate wilderness." Okay. America, this is the hub for Edom's rulership. Okay, the other countries are gonna get destroyed, but not totally destroyed. You're gonna have some rebuilding to do. All right, but America, yeah, it's not going to exist anymore. It's going to burn for a long time. All right, and after which, only desert creatures are going to inhabit this place. You know, no one will ever profit from America. Okay, which is through the labor of the Israelites. Okay. Again, it says that Egypt should be a desolation and Edom should be a desolate wilderness for the violence against the children of Judah. That's the southern kingdom. Those who were coming over on the transatlantic slave trade in the Middle Passage. Okay. Because they have shed blood in their land. Okay. Edom. Okay. The so-called white man. Okay. You all did this. And the evidence is overwhelming and cannot be disputed. All right. Verse 20, it says, "But Judah shall dwell forever, and Jerusalem from generation to generation." So what does that mean? Okay. Judah dwelling forever, that's the southern kingdom, and Jerusalem from generation to generation. That's immortality. Okay. That's immortality. We're going to have the laws, statutes, and commandments on our inward parts. You get that account. That's the second covenant. All right. You get that account in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 31, verses 31 through 34. And then it's in the New Testament. Okay. Quoted in Hebrews chapter 8, verses 8 through 13. Same thing. Okay. Same thing. That's the second covenant, the new covenant. And it's only with the nation of Israel, as you will see when you read that. All right. It says, "But Judah shall dwell forever, and Jerusalem from generation to generation." That's those new immortal bodies, you know, godlike, you know, something you won't be able to stop because we're a promised immortality. All right. It says, "For I will cleanse their blood that I have not cleansed. For Yahweh Bahashem, it's like for Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai dwelleth in Zion." Okay. That means a monument, his people, beginning with the men. Okay. who are the express image, the elect man is the express image of the Most High. Okay. He says, "For I will cleanse their blood that I have not cleansed. For Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai dwelleth in Zion." How is he going to cleanse it? All right. This is the book of Numbers, chapter 35, verse 33. And it reads, "So ye shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, for blood it defileth the land, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it." So yeah, we have a bone to pick with a lot of nations, but Esau, you never showed any mercy, and you still don't, and you think you're gonna get away with it. No, this is the scriptures right here, especially you ones who call yourselves Christians and you Edomites. Yeah, you want to be everybody else but the Edomite. All right, but everything that the scriptures say about you, leave no doubt that Esau Edom is a so-called white man, even though the scriptures say that. You are living up to your role in the scriptures as the hammer of the earth, the wicked who's the sword of the Lord. Okay, so yeah, so just like you like to shed blood, your blood is going to be shed until you exist no more. This is the same thing that Ezekiel 35, 5 and 6 said. All right, you didn't hate blood. Okay, since you didn't hate shedding blood, yeah, well, now it's the same thing's gonna happen to you. All right, the same thing's gonna happen to you in righteousness. All right, I'll close out with this one. This is the book of Colossians. No, it's like go to Revelation just to drive it home. Revelation chapter 13, beginning in verse 9. And it reads, "If any man have an ear, let him hear." That means any man with understanding, let him understand. It says, "He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity." All right. Who's in captivity right now? That has us in captivity. Esau Edom, the so-called white man. All right. That's you. Yeah. It says, "He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword." All right. Whose blessing is the sword? Esau Edom. Like I said, Genesis 27. That's your blessing. I want to say verse 39 through 41. All right. I'm gonna get that. Let me just verify that. I know I said it twice. Genesis 27. Verse 39. Yeah, verse 40. Yeah, it says, yep, verse 40. "And by thy sword shalt thou live, and thou shalt serve thy brother. And it shall come to pass when thou shalt have the dominion, and thou shalt break his yoke off thy neck." Okay, and that was they had us, the Edomites, the Idumeans, had us in captivity during the Greek and Roman captivities. Okay, and then Jake took Esau down. All right, and then you had the period where Jake was taken down and has been in this devil's captivity ever since. Going all the way back to the Renaissance period. All right, so yeah, that was the correct quote. All right, back to Revelation 13. All right, 10. It says, "He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity, and he that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints." Who are the saints? The Israelites. All right. The Israelites are the saints, no one else. Let me grab that precept. It's a couple of them. Go with Psalms 50 and 5 first. All right. And it reads, Gather my saints together unto me, those that have made a covenant with me by sacrifice. What nation of people made a covenant with Yahweh by Shem Shai? The Israelites at Mount Sinai. Okay? It was the Israelites that made that covenant. You can get that in Leviticus uh, chapter 26, starting at around verse 42 at the end. Okay? I'll just grab that just to back that up. So you know the first covenant was with Israel, and the second covenant is with Israel. Like I quoted Jeremiah 31 verses 31 through 34 earlier, as well as Hebrews chapter 8 verses 8 through 13. All right, this is the book of Genesis chapter 26. Salakia, Leviticus chapter 26, again at verse 42. Okay. Uh, verse 42, it says, Then will I remember my covenant, okay, with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Abraham. Will I remember? Okay. And I will remember the land. Like I said, the land is described in Genesis chapter 15, verse 18. He says, The land also shall be left of them and shall enjoy her Sabbaths, while she lieth desolate without them, and they shall accept the punishment of their iniquity, because they have despised my judgments, and because their souls abhor my statutes. All right. So yeah, we went into captivity. He says, And yet for all that, when they be in the land of their enemies, I will not cast them away. All right, so that's right there cuts that whole doctrine. A lot of you Edomites try to say that the Jews rejected the Lord. Clowns, straight up. He says, neither will I abhor them, which means to detest them, okay? To destroy them utterly, because there's going to be a remnant, the 1/3. 2/3 of our people are going to be cut off. You know, you get that in Zechariah chapter 13, verses 8 and 9. All right. It says, and to break my covenant with them. All right. Who made that covenant? The saints. All right. We know the saints are Israelites. Okay. Because of that covenant. It says, for I am Yahweh their power. Okay. It says, but I will for their sakes remember the covenant of their ancestors, whom I brought forth out of the land of Egypt in the sight of the heathen, that I might be their power. I am Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Verse 46. It says, These are the statutes and judgments and laws which Yahweh Bashem Yahushai made between him and the children of Israel in Mount Sinai by the hand of Moses. All right. No one else will be able to partake in that covenant. Okay. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Like I said, I had two precepts for those saints, just so, you'll see. Teaching moment right now. Psalms 148, verse 14. Okay. It says, He also exalted the horn of his people, the praise of all his saints, even of the children of Israel, a people near unto him. Praise ye Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. All right. So with that, I hope this lesson was edifying to the elect body of the nation of Israel. Once again, going to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rahakakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders, great millstone who rule well, and teaching us this 100% truth. Salutations to them and my fellow Akim who labor in this truth week in and week out on the highways and byways. Also, salutations to the hopeful elect of the scattered 12 tribes of Israel, scattered to the four corners of the earth, that be like unto the speckled bird, also known as your Israelite foreigners and your so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. To you, I say Shalom, Kwame Yasharala, Abad Babal. We got next. Your time is up, Esau Edom. Shalom to the elect.